It is UFC 309 fight week. Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic for the UFC heavyweight title. And the biggest narrative being discussed on the Thursday before the fight card is Jon Jones refusing to fight Tom Aspinall, or as a lot of people are saying, Jon Jones ducking Tom Aspinall. And a lot has happened. Yesterday at Media Day, Jon Jones was brutally confronted by a media member on his refusal to fight Tom Aspinall and using hypocritical statements to really back up his stance for why he doesn't want to fight Tom Aspinall. And then not only that, Jon Jones stormed out of an interview because he did not want to be asked questions about Tom Aspinall as well. We're going to check out clips from the Media Day as well as Jon Jones storming out of the interview. And lastly in this video, we have a lot to break down. Dana White has finally done an interview where he was asked specifically, would you make Jon Jones versus Alex Pereira, or is Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall next? If in fact Jon Jones does stick around and stay in the UFC instead of retiring. So we're going to break it all down in this video. Let's jump right into it. First thing we have is the Media Day yesterday. I encourage you to go check out the full thing. There's a lot to dissect from this press conference or from this Media Day. But Jon Jones was asked explicitly, well, a lot of fans are saying you're ducking Tom Aspinall. Why aren't you ducking Tom Aspinall? What are we missing? What are the fans missing? You know, break it down from your kind of perception, Jon Jones. And this was Jon's answer. Now, this is not him being confronted yet. We'll get to that in a second.
Okay, so I feel like narratives have been created that just truly aren't there. You can't duck a man that you were never scheduled to fight. It's like saying you got turned down by a girl who you never even hit on. You know what I'm saying? It's like me and Dana and Hunter have never sat down and talked about Tom Aspinall.
Let's just go ahead and deal with the elephant in the room. The UFC is now sponsored by Wingstop. Wingstop is absolutely garbage. I've gone to Wingstop twice in my life. Both times I've thrown it away. I'm like, I'm not eating that. It's absolute garbage. I'm disgusted to see it in the backdrop there. What an absolute shame. But Jon Jones saying, how can I duck a guy that I've never been even approached to fight? And I understand his point too a little bit, and I'll kind of give my stance on it in a second, but let's listen to some more.
He's never been on my radar. Never. I mean, just a moment ago, it was him and Sergey that was fighting. And Sergey could be in this position right now, and I would still be in the same place of I've beat people my whole career, and once I beat them, like the show just goes on. Like the French fans were just all over my case, and I just beat their guy, and I find myself constantly in the same position of, oh wow, he just beat another guy. Like what's next? You know what I mean? Like when I beat Glover Teixeira, he was on a 20-fight winning streak. And you beat Glover, and then everything just moves on. So for me,
I understand what Jones is trying to say here. There's always the next guy, and I've tried to break that down to you guys in different videos. But the problem with what Jones is saying is there always will be that next guy for Jon Jones. But the problem is you have the heavyweight title. You fought and won the title against Cyril Gane. Now you have the rightful number one contender. People keep using the interim belt. Oh, the interim belt, the interim belt, the interim belt. I'm going to be honest. I don't give a rat's ass about the interim belt. The fact is he is the true number one contender. And if you were saying, look, after Stipe, I'm done, I'm retiring, that's the end of it, I can accept that. I think a lot of fans would still cry and whine. I would be 100% on Jones' side. He wants to retire. He's been around forever. He's getting old. He doesn't want to stick around too long. But he's saying he wants to keep the heavyweight title. Well, he's not really saying he wants to keep the heavyweight title, but he is the heavyweight champion, and he doesn't want to fight the rightful number one contender. And he's saying, I'm not retiring. I want to fight fun fights like Alex Pereira. It's really, really a bad look. It really is. That is, like, I get it. He's never been approached. That's a good point. I've never been approached. I've never been offered the Tom Aspinall fight. And I think, the ducking claims are a little bit premature, but Jones has shown, unless he's trolling, that he has no intentions of fighting Tom Aspinall. Now, to his credit, he has said, look, I'll relinquish the belt. I don't care about the belt. I don't need the belt. I think he even says it in some of the clips I'm going to show you here. But to say, oh, I'm not ducking him because I've never been offered a fight with him, well, we all know that's what should be next if you do beat Stipe Miocic. So if you stick around, you should be fighting Tom Aspinall. But let's listen to some more.
Personally now, it's just like, I get that Tom is an exciting fighter. I get that finally, after 16 years, we found somebody who's 7 years younger than me and 30 pounds bigger than me. Like, we finally found someone who may give me a great challenge. And everyone wants to see it so bad. But for me, it's like, what is it? What's in it for me? He changes nothing if I beat him. Beating Tom is just like beating Cyril Gain. Has a whole country behind him. He's hot right now. What happens to me after I beat him? Nothing changes for me.
I got to be honest. I know people aren't going to like it. He's right. If you've watched Jones' career, every single time it's always the next guy, whether it's Glover Teixeira or Gustafsson in the rematch or Daniel Cormier or in the earlier days, Lyoto Machida. There's always the next guy. But where I disagree with Jones is I think with all the outcry of how good Tom Aspinall is and his brutal finishing power and the fact that he's a scary guy in the heavyweight division, he's this new breed of heavyweight, which was a very similar story with Cyril Gane. I got to agree with Jon Jones on that. I think to unify those belts and go out with 2 heavyweight title defenses, I think it's huge for your resume. I think a lot of people are looking at, the Pereira fight as, look, you're calling out Pereira because he has no grappling, which is crazy, by the way. People are saying this, if he does in fact never fight Tom Aspinall, it's a stain on his legacy. How good must you be to call out Alex Pereira and everyone's like, yeah, this guy's calling out bums. Nobody wants to see that. It's an easy fight. I mean, imagine how good you must be. So I don't think it's going to be this huge stain on his legacy, but it is. It just looks, but it is something that looks bad overall, especially the fact that this could be his last fight week, and this is all we're talking about right now is his refusal to fight Tom Aspinall. And I talked about this. I did a video with Kevin Ioli. If you want to go check that out, I encourage you to check it out. All Jones has to say is, look, it's always been the next guy. I'm going to beat Stipe, and we'll see where I go from there. That's it. I don't really have, an inclination to want to unify the belts. I relinquished the belt. I don't know. I'm not going to be a guy who's going to be defending a belt 4 times a year anymore. I'm 37 years old. That'd be fine. We could all accept that. But the fact that he keeps harping on, I'm not fighting Tom Aspinall, and he's saying things that are very hypocritical. He hasn't really said them yet. I'm so happy that a media member, and we're going to look at that clip in a second, calls him out for it. But let's continue.
So I'm not ducking Tom Aspinall. If I failed to fight Stipe, I would be ducking Stipe because we contractually have been signed up to fight over a year ago. This is Stipe's position. The Tom narrative came out of nowhere. He won a belt, and now suddenly I'm ducking him. I've never had negotiations to even fight him, if this makes sense. So the fans are just ignoring it. They're ignoring all logic, and they just have finally found someone that they think can compete with me, and everyone wants to see it now.
I guess.
You know what's funny? That is part of the narrative. Everyone wants to see Jon Jones lose before he leaves the UFC. That's what they want, and they think Tom Aspinall could be that guy. But at the end of the day, you're the heavyweight champion, and preemptively you're saying you're not going to fight the interim champion and #1 contender. I mean, how are people not going to say that's ducking? I mean, that's what it looks like. Now, Jones could be trolling. Maybe the UFC throws him an offer he can't refuse. We're going to look at what Dana White has to say in a minute or in a few minutes. But it just doesn't look good overall. Now, the next part that really doesn't look good, and I'm going to skip through the question here. Someone asked him, for the right amount of money, you'd fight Tom, right? I'm summing up the question. Jones's answer does not look good. He's not making his case very well. He's just not making it very well. Listen to this.
He does nothing for me. He does nothing for me. If you're a person that wants to see me really challenged, then I get it, right? Like I said, 7 years younger, like 35 pounds bigger than me, right? I get it. It's like, wow, this John's so good. We finally found someone way younger and way bigger than him. Let's see how he does against that. I get that narrative. But for me, if you were my manager, if you were on my team, why not fight against Pereira, a guy who's the same age as you, and we walk around the same exact size?
See, I think this is a horrible look. So, you're the heavyweight champion, aren't you? You're supposed to be pound for pound #1. Now you're worried about a couple extra pounds? You're worried about 7 years of youth? You know, Jon Jones, one of the youngest champions of all time, the youngest champion of all time, was fighting guys that were significantly older than him. Now, arguably, they were in their prime, and it was crazy that Jones was doing it at 23 years old. But, like, how can you say, yeah, I don't want to fight him, and then you say, oh, well, because of age? Because of weight? You're in the heavyweight division. You're in the heavyweight division. Like, I just don't get this. Every time Jones has opened his mouth this week, it's like he's putting his foot in it. And this has been historically Jon Jones. But to criticize and say, well, Aspinall's 30 pounds heavier than me and 7 years younger than me. How old was Shogun Rua when you fought him? I believe he was like 30 years old and Jones was like 23. 7 years. You know, people say, oh, Jones's frame was huge for light heavyweight. That's why they always wanted to see him move up to heavyweight. Now, I believe Jones's frame was just crazy, and I don't believe Jones is a natural heavyweight to begin with, but that's besides the point. You're complaining about how much Tom Aspinall weighs, and you're using that as an excuse not to fight him when you are the heavyweight champion. It makes no sense. Makes absolutely no sense.
Right now, I had to eat a big breakfast because I'm getting underneath 235.
When you're talking about your breakfast, when you're using your breakfast to justify not fighting Tom Aspinall, it's just it's just a bad look. It's a really, really bad look. And you know what's crazy? And I don't feel like anybody's really talked about this. Jones is painting himself into a corner. If he loses against Stipe Miocic, what happens then? Oh my God, the debacle he would be in then. Because imagine Stipe say, oh, okay, I'm retiring. Jones better be happy retiring with that sour taste in his mouth of a loss to Stipe Miocic, the dude who's been answering phones at the fire department for the last 4 years.
Pereira walks around at like 240, and he has magnificent accolades. Business-wise, it makes more sense. I'm going to call him this, fight the nobody that may be more dangerous, or fight the guy with all the accolades who's incredibly dangerous, but it actually will affect your legacy. Me beating Cyril Gane didn't change anything for me, just gave me a few more millions. And it would be the same for Tom Aspinall, where when you look back and it's like Jon just beat Alex Pereira, it's bigger. It's just much bigger. And anybody who can't understand that logic simply doesn't want to.
I hate to say it, Jon is 100% correct here. And I people get this mixed up sometimes when I've broken down this topic. I want nothing more than Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall for the heavyweight title. I want to see them unify the belts. I am always in favor of a meritocracy. But historically, fans have been like, who cares if Bilal gets skipped over? Colby's a draw. Jon Jones is 100% correct, and the Alex Pereira fight is a bigger fight. Jones versus Pereira for the heavyweight title. Pereira moving up and trying to claim a third belt against the GOAT of the sport in Jon Jones. It's going to do mega pay-per-view buys. Mega pay-per-view buys. And there's going to be people thinking, yeah, Pereira's going to knock him out. Now, the majority of us know what would happen in that fight. Okay? And again, that just speaks to how good Jon Jones is. But he would destroy Pereira. And which is why I have no desire to see that fight. But he is right saying, look, I'm going to make more. He's basically saying, I'm going to make more money. It's not as dangerous. He's got a bigger name. And the name looks better on my resume in the future. We don't know what Tom's going to end up doing in the UFC. You know, Tom, in a heavyweight division, nobody even defends the belt more than a couple times ever. Ever. So you never know where Tom can end up. And he's saying Pereira's already established himself. If I beat him, that's more money in my pocket. It's a bigger fight, and it's an easier fight for me. That's essentially what he's saying here. Next clip is where the media member finally calls him out. And this was perfect because throughout this week, and I've covered it quite a bit, Jones has said, you know, Aspinall doesn't deserve it. He hasn't fought any champions. And I've said, well, what champions does he want Tom Aspinall to fight? Because there's none available to him. The only two available to him are Jon Jones and Stipe Miocic. So it made no sense. And he's acted like Tom Aspinall has done nothing to earn a title shot when he has beaten a lot of the top 10 in the heavyweight division. A media member finally grows some balls. And this is the type of questions I would be asking if I was at a press conference. This is perfectly formulated and not disrespectful at all. And it's just the perfect question. Listen to this. And I believe this is the reason he stormed out of an interview, which we're going to take a look at the next day, which was technically today. He refused to do an interview with TNT Sports.
I agree that the Alex Pereira fight would be massive. Obviously, the accolades, I think, is a really strong argument you make. That said, I think one of the critiques people have is not that you picking Alex over Tom. It's the he doesn't deserve the fight me statement. When you compare his career at this point to when you got a title shot, he has more wins, more stoppages, more wins against ranked opponents, more main events. He's got the interim title. So what is your response to people saying, like, not that you take it Alex Pereira, I mean, gosh, the guy's amazing.
Right.
But the Tom doesn't deserve me comment.
Damn. That was perfect. That was perfect. I mean, we'll talk. This got round of applause for that media member. And look, he's got Jon Jones' wheels turning in his head. He's like, oh God, this guy's got a point here. I mean, Shogun gave you the opportunity. So if you want to retire, retire. But don't try to act like, oh, well, I want to fight this guy instead. I don't want to fight Tom. He doesn't deserve it. Again, I understand to a certain extent what Jon has been trying to say. But the statements that he's been using to try to back up his decision just look stupid. Like Tom doesn't deserve it. I love this question. Let's look at Jon's answer.
Well, maybe I didn't phrase it right. Maybe I didn't phrase it right. You know, the truth is he does deserve many great things in his life. And I wish him to have a magnificent UFC career. I really do. I have nothing personal against Tom.
Remember that. He has nothing personal against Tom, because in a second we're going to hear him call Tom Aspinall an asshole. Very bizarre. Makes me even feel even more confident that he just wants nothing to do with Tom Aspinall for maybe, you know, a litany of other reasons. But it's nothing personal against Tom Aspinall. Remember that.
So maybe I shouldn't have said that he doesn't deserve, because he does deserve great things.
Yeah, you shouldn't have said it. You're right. You should have just said, oh, you know, I'm not really interested in that fight. I want more legacy fights. And that's it. End of story. That's it. Not that he doesn't deserve a heavyweight title shot when he's the interim champ and #1 contender.
What I'd like to see him do is go on and have a great career. You know, so many times people like to just try to go straight to the top, you know. And if we're in a business setting where he is and where I am, he wouldn't even be crossing paths with me. He wouldn't even be talking to me. You know what I'm saying? That's just what it is.
So you could say the same thing for anything. You could say, well, Jones, you and Shogun Rua, you know, if you guys were in a business setting, you would never even be able to talk to him. It just makes no sense, and it just looks dumb. Instead of just saying, "Look, I'm not interested. I don't want to fight." These statements are just so dumb.
It's not about what Tom deserves or don't deserve. I believe it's what I do deserve. And after this many years with this company and all the work that I've put in, I believe I'm at a place where I deserve to be able to say, I don't want to fight that guy. I want to fight this guy. I want to fight that guy. And that's why I'm be more than willing to relinquish the belt. I don't feel like I need the heavyweight championship of the world. I feel like what I've created for myself is almost bigger than belts.
He's correct. He's correct. And if he relinquishes the belt, at the end of the day, I'm going to be disappointed because I want to see Jones versus Aspinall. But if he relinquishes the belt, the fans really can't complain. Because, again, he's not holding up a division. Tom can be undisputed champion. It'll be disappointing. It's the fight, you know, we all want to see. But if he relinquishes the belt, that's fine. I hate to say it.
To take a step back and say, hey, you become the heavyweight champion. Go ahead and let's see you become a 17-time champion. Or let's see you even beat Stipe's record. That's going to be hard for anybody to do. But what I do feel like I deserve is the ability to just take a step back. And
wait a second. Wait just a second here. Who holds a microphone like this? What is going on here? What is going on here? I just noticed this for the first time. Why is he holding the mic like that? It looks like he never used his hands a day in his life. Looks very bizarre.
And say, hey, either I retire or I start fighting fights that make sense to my legacy. And Alex Pereira is the only fight right now that makes sense to my legacy. A guy who's young and, my age and active still.
Why? I don't understand this obsession with he has to be his age. What about all the guys you fought that you were younger than? It's just a horrible, horrible look, an indefensible take. I want to fight guys my own age. Why? You're like, what?
And have something worthwhile to me. Fans around the world, a lot of people really want to see me lose. They really want to see me lose. To see me walk away with all the chips just irks people inside. And I'm glad to be in this position to walk away with all the chips.
And again, it just makes it seem like he's terrified to lose. Now, ultimately, and I know I'm going to get crucified for this down in the comments, I think Jones beats Tom Aspinall. But he's looking at Tom Aspinall, younger, heavier, more powerful, and he's thinking, if I zig instead of zag, the career that I'm done with anyway, I got one more fight left in me anyway, potentially, after the Stipe fight. Why risk it against Tom Aspinall, who, if I beat him, most likely doesn't do much for me after the fact? People will be like, oh, Tom was overrated. I kind of get it, but again, oh yeah, why, you know, he said it multiple times, why do I want to gamble my legacy? It's a horrible look, and he's like, oh, I want to fight a guy my own age. This isn't charity work here. We're not doing Legends divisions. It's just a really, really horrible look, especially with the way he's holding that microphone. Very, very weird. Next clip, we're going to jump ahead. And this is where he says, look, flat out, I'm not fighting Tom. I'm only fighting Pereira and or retiring. Listen to this.
Stating fashion, then the desire in my heart would be like, okay, now it's Alex Pereira. And if the UFC doesn't want that to happen, because ultimately it's the boss's decision, then it won't happen. And I'll just move on with my life. But that's one of the ways I look at it is, would you guys rather lose me or get one more super fight? And the only super fight that makes sense to me, not to everyone else, but to me and my team, is Alex Pereira.
So I don't understand. You're hashing this out with your team. You're like, yeah, Pereira is much more beatable. What I think really this comes down to is I think Jones is kind of checked out anyway. And I think he's ready to retire. And he's like, let me get that one last big paycheck against Alex Pereira, who has a massive name in the sport. He's reigning over my old division. And it's a very, very favorable matchup to me. That's what I think's going on. I mean, he tore his, you know what? He tore his pectoral muscle last year. He's 37. He's like, let me go get that easy paycheck. You know, I fought Stipe, the GOAT of heavyweight. Let me go beat the guy who's trying to kind of take my spot as the GOAT of light heavyweight, which will never happen, to be quite honest. And that's really what he's hoping for. And he's hoping for an easy payday and a bigger payday. Last clip I want to look at from this media day before we see him storming out from the interview. It's just, I mean, look, when I seen Alex Pereira saying that Ankalaev was boring, and I was like, this is really making me convinced that he actually is ducking him and it's not really like a UFC decision. This right here is very, very bizarre. I have my suspicions about what it's about, but this is when he starts kind of personally attacking Tom Aspinall. When Tom Aspinall really hasn't been that disrespectful. I'll give my theory on it in a second, but to come out of nowhere and say, look, Tom's an asshole, I don't want to fight him, is very, very bizarre.
There's a part of it that does, but if I'm being completely honest, I feel like Tom's been such an asshole that I don't want to do business with him. You know, it's just like his fans have been so annoying. And obviously you don't get this far in a career being affected by fans or whatnot, but he's just an asshole, you know, with his, you know, he's 30, so he's from this influencer generation where you hop online and the t-shirt sales and all that. I'm past that type of stuff. I'm like, bro, if you had a little bit more respect, then maybe we could have worked something out, you know, but I just don't even want to do business with him. You know, at the end of the day, this is a business, and fighting me gives him an opportunity to change his life forever. And I don't even want to give him the opportunity. Like he just played his cards wrong with me personally, and you know, I'm 3 years from being a 40-year-old grown man. You know what I'm saying? It's just like the press conference, going through the whole shebang with him. I'd rather not do. Pereira on the other side, respectful, cool, barely says much. It's like, I'll do business with you. I would risk it all with a human being like you. You actually have the accolades to back up your shit. This other guy is just a big mouth who's hot today. There's been so many guys who's hot today who are just gone. You know, Sergey was in the same position not too long ago. Now he's starting to fall off already. I've just been around this sport too long to give a big mouth who's hot today the opportunity.
Look, I understand 100% of what Jones is saying in regards to he's hot today, he may not be here tomorrow. There's always the next guy, the next guy, the next guy. If he takes on Tom Aspinall, Jalton Almeida wins a fight or two in the meantime. He's ducking Jalton Almeida now. But the crazy part is to call Tom an asshole. Like, what? Like, maybe he's talking about the fans, I guess, because a lot of fans are being quite annoying. But it's Jones' kind of self-inflicted wounds with some of the statements that he's making. But to say Tom's an asshole, like, Tom's like, hi, John. I'd really like to fight you. I can't even play that clip because I'll get copyright by the UFC because it's an in-cage interview. But hi, John. I'd like to. I don't have nothing against you, but I just think I'm better than you. I don't know. The only thing I can come up with is Aspinall recently put out a video, and I really should have the clip ready, but we got so much to look through, I didn't even have it for this video. He said Jon Jones ducked Francis Ngannou, which, by the way, is going to end Tom Aspinall getting stripped of that interim belt and maybe cut from the organization by Dana White. Because Jones did not duck Francis Ngannou. You guys know I've covered the Francis Ngannou saga extensively. Jon Jones was in negotiations with the UFC for a new contract at that time. And that's why the Jones-Ngannou fight never happened. When Ngannou started being on the outs with the UFC, Dana and the UFC really prioritized signing Jon Jones. My guess is Ngannou got Jon Jones a bigger contract at the end of the day. And that's what happened. He didn't duck him. So I'm wondering if Tom Aspinall kind of regurgitating that fan narrative that's now cropped up it has him saying, look, Tom's an asshole, Tom's a big mouth, saying those types of things like, oh, he ducked Francis Ngannou, which just really simply isn't true at all, which is crazy because fans were running with the Dana narrative last year that, oh, Ngannou ducked Jones. Ngannou was scared of losing to Jones and he wouldn't have made that much money because he would have lost to Jones and it would have been the end of his career. Now the fans are flipping the script because they want to go against Jones now. Oh, he ducked Ngannou. That's just simply not true. He was negotiating with the UFC. Next thing I want to take a look at. And we're going to hear what Dana White has to say about Jones saying he's going to retire if he doesn't. He's going to fight Pereira or retire. But Jon Jones had an interview scheduled with TNT Sports. I forgot the guy's last name, but his first name's Adam. I think it's like Catterall or something like that. Works for TNT Sports, works like in the UK media, and apparently has some relationship with Tom Aspinall. This is Jones heading to the interview with him and decides, you know what, I'm not interviewing with this guy. Watch this.
What's up, guys? How we doing?
Doing well.
You okay?
Doing well.
How's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing all right.
Good, man.
Shakes his hand, touches his back, goes to sit down, and then watch us.
Good. Have a seat, sir.
I can call you guys in, but
Hey, I'm not gonna do this interview.
You don't want to do it?
No, because it's gonna be an Aspinall fest. I'm not gonna. Let's go.
I got to be honest, and I think I'm going to have a nuanced topic on this. I think that this is fine to a certain extent, okay? Hear me out. Don't go crazy just yet. It's fine if you don't want to do certain media and you're tired of the Aspinall questions because you're trying to focus on Stipe. But my problem is he walks in, and I don't mean to be overanalyzing grown men, you know, greeting each other. But he smiles at this guy, he shakes his hand, probably hears his UK accent. And then instead of looking him in the eyes right here and saying, hey man, look, I know you're apparently he's friends with Tom Aspinall, you're buddies with Tom Aspinall, you're from the UK, there's going to be some bias here, at least that's my perception. I really don't feel like doing this interview. Instead, he just walks away as the guy turns his back and then just kind of says, oh, I don't want to do this interview. It's going to be a Tom Aspinall fest. Now, he does actually acknowledge him towards the end of this video. You'll see in a second. But I just think the way he handled it just looks so childish. It looks so childish and awkward. I mean, look at this. He's like, I'm not going to do this.
I can call you guys in, but
Hey, I'm not gonna do this interview.
Like, he could have literally just told that guy. I just think this is so disrespectful to that guy who, like, took his time out. That's his job. To not just look him in the eye and say, look, man, I don't feel like doing this. I don't wish to do this. It's nothing personal against you. You know, I just know your relationship with Aspinall, whatever that relationship is specifically. I don't actually know. But instead, he just walks off, turns his back on him, says, I'm not going to do this interview to other people. It's kind of disrespectful. And that's my big problem with it. If he just said, look, I'm tired of being asked about Aspinall. You know, I want to focus on Stipe. I'm not going to do this interview. I'm sorry about that. Sorry about that, buddy. And just left with a smile on his face. I could accept that. I just think this is so pathetic. You couldn't look the guy in his eyes and say, look, man, I'm not going to do the interview. You got to walk away and tell this crowd of people over here, I'm not going to do it. And just make the guy feel kind of small. I just think it's disrespectful.
You don't want to do it? No, because it's gonna be an Aspinall fest. I'm not gonna. Let's go.
And then here's where he actually talks to the guy face to face. Now, I don't know when this is. I don't know if there's a time lapse in between this. But again, why couldn't he do this from the very beginning?
I see how close you guys are, and common sense tells me what type of questions I was going to get asked. So I'm just like,
It sounds good. Speak to who you want to speak to.
thank you.
And the guy said, just speak to who you want to speak to. Common sense tells me what kind of questions you're going to ask. You could have simply said to him, hey, man, I don't want to talk about Tom Aspinall. Ask me about Stipe Miocic. That's the fight that I'm focusing on. Or if he asked you one question about Tom Aspinall, just say I have no comment. It's that simple. It is that simple. And this just makes it look like Jones is losing focus. He knows what kind of, like, what? I don't even know what kind of, I pay attention to MMA media. And I don't know what kind of relationship these guys have. Maybe I should have researched that before doing this video, but it's not really that consequential. I'm assuming, the UK guys are particularly biased, especially in the media. I know that. But, yeah, I know what kind of relationship you guys have. What kind of relationship do they have?
I see how close you guys are, and common sense tells me what type of questions I was going to get asked. So I'm just like,
you can tell this guy's offended, by the way. He'll never say that because he's probably a professional media member. But you can tell. You can tell he's kind of offended. And you have the right to talk to who you want to talk to. But I know. What was it? Hold on. I know how close you are. What was it? I keep saying relationship.
I see how close you guys are.
I see how close you guys are. How does he even know that? That's what I want to know. What is he watching? But I guess Jones takes in everything, man. Jones takes in everything. So I guess he's seeing that. So my take on this entire thing here is just kind of embarrassing and a bad look for Jones, especially the way he handled it initially. It just makes him look pathetic, to be quite honest. Like, you couldn't look the guy in the eye and say, oh, I'm not really, keen on doing this because you're going to ask me about Aspinall and you're his little butt buddy. You're playing touch butt in the park. I don't know that he's doing that, but I'm just saying I would have been better off to just say that rather than kind of disrespect him and waste his time. They probably set that up. They had everything raring to go. Now, granted, they interviewed other fighters, so it probably wasn't a total loss. But you guys get my point. Last thing I want to take a look at is Dana White was asked on Jim Rome's show about Jon Jones saying he wants to fight Alex Pereira instead of Tom Aspinall. And we finally get an answer from Dana White. Let's take a listen. There's no video to this. It's just audio. This took place, I think it's like a Twitter show. It's hard to find clips from the Jim Rome show.
Jon, when he was 23 years old and became the youngest champion ever, somebody gave him the opportunity for greatness. And I think Jon will eventually come back and face Tom Aspinall. But
if you've been watching for a long time, the way Dana's acted about Jon Jones, Tom Aspinall, reminds me of the way he acted about GSP Johnny Hendricks 2. If you remember the post-fight press conference, he acted like GSP Johnny Hendricks 2 was a foregone conclusion and that GSP wasn't actually retiring. That's what this reminds me of, wolf tickets.
If he decides Saturday night, that's it, it's over, it's his right to make that decision. What this guy's accomplished, nobody else has even come close to accomplishing, and he's the greatest of all time, so we'll see.
Dana White joining us. Dana, bottom line, is he ducking Aspinall?
For anybody to say he's ducking anybody, Jon Jones is like 37, 38 years old. He's fought everybody. He's fought all the best in the world. And
by the way, Jon Jones has always been a bit of a spoiled brat with the UFC. But I really think Dana White recently just sucking Jon Jones off left and right. I think it's made Jon Jones feel even more entitled. And you guys know why Dana has done that, right? He's done it to compensate for Francis Ngannou giving him an L. He didn't want any discussion about Ngannou being the heavyweight and Ngannou being a great heavyweight and Ngannou being the lineal champion and Ngannou being this unbelievable KO artist. So he started really sucking on Jon Jones for the last 2 years. And that's what he's doing here. And it's made Jon Jones, I think it's blown up in his head even more, to be honest.
In their prime, been doing it since he was 23 years old. He doesn't duck any, and he's undefeated. He's never lost a fight. Which is
just because you haven't ducked in the past doesn't mean you can't duck in the future. If you still want to fight and you're refusing to fight Tom Aspinall, there's no two ways about it. You're ducking him. You don't want to fight him. You don't want to risk losing against him. If there is a mega paycheck on the line, a massive pay-per-view, and maybe that's Jon Jones's plan. Maybe this is his way of negotiating publicly with Dana White. He's done it in the past. There's not an easy way to 100% read Jon Jones. That could be what he's doing here, is publicly negotiating with Dana, and this is Dana publicly negotiating back here in a second. But, I mean, just because he's fought all the killers in the past doesn't mean he can't avoid Tom Aspinall, which would be ducking.
Which is unbelievable in like 16 years.
All right, fair enough. Why do you think he does not want to fight him? Like, for instance, before you answer that, he actually gave a reason, Dana. His reason is he doesn't want to do business with Aspinall, quote, he's just an a-hole, bro. If you had a little bit more respect, maybe we could have worked something out. I mean, is that how it is, Dana? Is it because he's an a-hole and he disrespected Jon?
That is classic Jon Jones right there. Classic Jon Jones.
AK making up bullshit, spewing bullshit. Classic Jon. Getting into hit and runs. Classic Jon. He's got a dark side to him. I wish he would have brought up his German Shepherds in this interview.
Jon will do what he does on Saturday. If he wins, like I said, he'll disappear for a while. And then the competitive spirit will start bubbling up again. And then money will talk. And if he doesn't decide to retire, he absolutely, positively fights Aspinall.
Absolutely, positively fights Tom Aspinall. I don't believe Dana for 1 second. Now, it could happen, but also, so you're going to keep the belt on Jon Jones for another couple. Is this going to be like the Khabib retirement, where you keep the belt on Khabib for months and months and months, hoping that he's going to return? I don't remember when they officially announced Khabib had finally actually vacated, even though he technically did it the night of, I believe it was UFC 254. Are you just going to keep the belt on Jones until the end of the year or a little bit past the end of the year and maybe first quarter of 2025 while you try to coax him into fighting Tom Aspinall? Because then that's actually annoying. If he just relinquishes the belt, if on Saturday night he beats Stipe, says, I'm dropping the belt, I have no desire to unify the belts with Tom Aspinall, I'm only interested in, legacy fights, and I don't believe that is one, I can deal with that. But what I can't deal with is if Jon Jones wants to hold up the heavyweight division and Dana White co-signs that shit. If Dana White's like, okay, Jon, you got a dark side too. You got 2 German Shepherds. You smack spray paint cans out of teenagers' hands during civil unrest. We got you, Jon. Oh, you shoot guns? Oh, Jon, you hold on to that title. Because once Jones vacates or is stripped, that fight's kind of out the window completely. It's done. The second Jones drops that belt, Jones versus Aspinall is done. Unless Jones retires for 2 years and then comes back because he needs a paycheck, maybe he blew all his money, and he wants to fight Tom Aspinall, and somehow Tom Aspinall's still champion. That'd be a mega fight. I don't believe retirement's ever last in MMA, so I don't believe Jones will officially retire forever. It's just a matter of who he inevitably ends up fighting. And he's asked specifically here in a second about Alex Pereira.
Yeah, he's not fighting Pereira.
That's what he's asking for. Obviously, he wants that BMF belt. So you tell me either you retire. Is this what it comes down to, Dana? He retires or he fights Aspinall?
Aspinall was a middleweight that moved up to light heavyweight. Okay.
He means Pereira there, by the way. He misspoke. He said Aspinall, but he meant Pereira, middleweight that moved up to light heavyweight.
He's also a kickboxer who has done very, very well in MMA. His wrestling isn't even near the level of Jon Jones. And Jon Jones is way bigger than him.
Which is hilarious. I don't think Jon Jones is way bigger than Pereira. But that statement right there tells me all I need to know in terms of Dana White protecting Pereira from Ankalaev. Because Dana White, he's like, oh no, I don't want Ankalaev to beat Pereira. Because Pereira is one of the UFC stars right now. And he's super exciting. And the light heavyweight division, there's, the guys that are at the top right now, and Jamal Hill and Yuri, he's already beaten them. He beat Khalil Roundtree. They're just going to try to feed him favorable matchups. Maybe like a Carlos Ulberg fight. And now they're like, oh, Jon Jones. Now all of a sudden Pereira's grappling is an issue. But it tells me all I need to know in terms of Dana did not want Pereira fighting Ankalaev. And I'm telling you right now, they better book that fight next. Because I don't, if they book Jones versus Pereira for the heavyweight title, they're holding up 2 divisions, which would be a disgrace.
If Jon Jones wants to fight again after Saturday night, he will fight Tom Aspinall.
So there you have it. Let me play that last ending.
The level of Jon Jones.
Let me play that ending one more time as I restart it. Listen to this.
And Jon Jones is way bigger than him. If Jon Jones wants to fight again after Saturday night, he will fight Tom Aspinall.
Now, a lot of people are cheering this on, and I understand. I love that. If that's the facts, I love that. But you think Dana White's going to turn down over 1 million pay-per-view buy because he doesn't want Jones to fight Pereira? No, he's not going to. He's not going to force Jones to fight Aspinall. He'll let Jones fight whoever he wants because at the end of the day, it's going to make money for the UFC. Jones fighting somebody is better than Jones fighting nobody. So if you're celebrating this statement from Dana, don't celebrate it because Dana says a lot of things. He means very little of it. And I do believe he will ultimately let Jon Jones fight whoever he wants. Maybe it won't be Pereira. Maybe there'll be some other fun fight that he'll let Jones fight. Maybe Jones does relinquish the belt and just kind of floats around there as this mega star in the UFC that is kind of defending, you know, whatever belt you want to make up for Jon Jones. But if Jon Jones does not want to fight Tom Aspinall, Jon Jones will not fight Tom Aspinall. Now, maybe this is all a negotiation tactic. I hope that it is. And I hope that we get Jones Aspinall, because that'll be one of the, with all this build up now, even around UFC 309, this is the biggest narrative surrounding this fight week. It'll be insanity if that fight actually comes to fruition. Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall. And if Jon is gone, I got to be honest, the heavyweight division's dead anyway. You basically have Tom Aspinall, Jalton Almeida, and Cyril Gane is what you have at the top of the heavyweight division. So the heavyweight division is bleak right now, especially the fact they weren't able to re-sign Francis Ngannou. So let me know what you guys think of all this down in the comments. Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And thank you so much for watching.